This presentation is an introduction to range plant identification and classification. Plant identification is the starting point for range management decisions. In Nebraska, there are more than 1,700 plant species native to the state. For each plant, there may be more than one common name, but there will only be one scientific name. For this class, we will be learning the common names. The first area of classification for plants we're concerned about are life forms. Life forms of range plants include grass, grass-like, forb, cactus, and shrubs. Grasses are plants that have parallel veins in their leaves. Their leaves generally appear on two sides of the stem, not in clusters. Exceptions may include new growth at the end of stems, and these are sometimes hard to see. The stems will be hollow or filled with a pithy material. They are not solid. The growth is vegetative. That would be the opposite of woody growth. And the stems will have nodes or joints, which is an enlarged area along the stem. The seeds of grasses are considered grains. Many of our domestic crops are grasses, such as corn and wheat. Here are some examples of grasses. On the top left is Cytosgrama. You can notice the seeds, which are grains. On the top right is Scribner rosette grass. You should be able to see the parallel veins in the leaves. On the bottom is Indian grass. It has obvious nodes or joints on the stems. Next is grass-likes. Grass-likes are similar to grasses in most ways. They have parallel veins in their leaves, but one thing they don't have are nodes. The stems are smooth. They do have vegetative growth, and they do have grain seeds. Grass-likes can be divided into two categories: sedges, which have stems that are triangular, and rushes, which have stems that are round. On the left, we have rushes. They're a round stem with no joints or nodes. And on the right are sedges. In this picture, you can't see the stem, but the leaves are coming out in groups of three because the stem has three sides. Forbs are next. Forbs are considered to be broad leaves, and the leaves have net-like veins or branching veins in them. Most plants will have showy flowers, meaning bright and colorful. For example, a sunflower. The growth is vegetative growth, and the stems are solid, unlike grasses. Sometimes we consider forbs to be wildflowers or weeds. Some examples of forbs on the top left. Annual sunflower, you can see the showy flowers. On the top right, goldenrod, also bright flowers. This is the state flower of Nebraska. Bottom left, roundhead lespedeza. You can see the net-like veins in the leaves. And on the bottom right, that's American deer vetch, easily recognized as a weed. Cactus plants have needles, which are a modified leaf. The plants generally have flowers that will bloom in the spring that are bright and showy. Cactus plants have vegetative growth and fleshy green stems, which will perform photosynthesis. A common example of cactus would be a big, prickly pear. The last category are shrubs. Shrubs are similar to forbs in that they have net-like veins and showy flowers, but the thing that makes them different is the woody growth. The stems do not die back in the winter and will be used year after year. They will have growth rings in them similar to a tree. Here are some examples. On the top left is broom snakeweed. Shrubs can be very small to very large. Don't confuse them with a forb just because it has flowers. Check for the woody stem. On the top right is buckbrush. You can see the woody stem and net-like veins in the leaves. The bottom left is smooth sumac. It has net-like veins in the leaves. Leaf shape on shrubs can vary greatly. The bottom right is a yucca. For every rule, there's an exception. This plant has no above-ground stem, and the leaves are similar to a grass, but it is still a shrub. The root is woody. The next category for classification is lifespan. The first lifespan is annual. These are plants that live only 1 year. Examples of annuals would be annual sunflower, sandbur, downy brome. All annuals are weeds, but not all weeds are annuals. The next category are biennials. Biennials live for 2 years. Example of some biennials include 4-point evening primrose and musk thistle. Biennials are all weeds. The first year they'll grow roots down in the ground and have a rosette of leaves just on the surface of the ground. In the second year they'll send up a stalk and produce seeds. And the last category are perennials. Perennials will live more than 3 years from the same root or stem. Grasses, forbs, and grass-likes that are perennials grow from the same crown or roots each year and will produce new stems and leaves. All shrubs are perennials and will reuse the same stems. Next is origin. Origin can be classified as either native, which means they were part of the vegetation originally in North America, or introduced, which means they have been brought in from somewhere outside of North America. Many introduced plants were brought in to increase the production of rangeland or pastures, for example, some of the clovers. Other plants were introduced accidentally and are weeds, such as leafy spurge. Some plants were brought in as ornamentals and escaped to the wild and are now weeds. Purple loosestrife is an example of that. Season of growth is the next category. This is classified only for grasses and grass-likes. There are 2 seasons of growth. The first one is warm season. Warm season plants have their main growth in the summer. Then at the end of the summer or in fall, they will set seed. The other category is cool season. Cool season plants have their main growth in the spring or then later in the fall when it cools down. They will set their seed in early summer after their main growth. In Nebraska, most grasses are warm season. The high summer temperatures enable them to compete better than the cool season grasses. Warm season grasses include big bluestem, little bluestem, Indian grass, and blue grama. The further north you go in the Great Plains, the more common cool season grasses are. They do well early in the spring in Nebraska, and then become mostly dormant in the summer and green up again in the fall. Cool season grasses include smooth brome and prairie June grass. Sedges are all cool season. Livestock forage values are listed as either high, medium, or low. This is based on the palatability or how they taste the livestock. It might depend upon the type of livestock or the time of year. Different livestock like different plants, and the time of year may determine whether a plant is more palatable or less palatable. In our handbook, there is an average forage value given. As a rule of thumb, the taller grasses have higher forage values, more leaves are available, and it's easier grazing for livestock to eat. Grass growth forms is next. This is only for the grasses. We have 3 grass growth forms. One is rhizomatous. That means that they have spreading underground stems. It's a modified stem that grows underneath the ground. And then a new plant will arise from that underground stem. The next one is stoloniferous. These are stems that spread above the ground, and they will have a plant grow in between them. And then bunch grass is the last category. These are plants that have neither rhizomes nor stolons. When we think of rhizome plants, we think of big bluestem, switchgrass, and prairie sandreed. Typically, these are the taller grasses. The only plants that have the that have stolons are the buffalo grass, eastern gama grass, hairy crabgrass, and redtop bent. All of the annuals are bunch grasses, but not all of the bunch grasses are annuals. One exception to that rule is the hairy crabgrass, which has stolons.